For exercise 5, I have created a rather complex spreadsheet for calculating simple interest. We're going to be doing a very similar one next with compound interest. Now, just to start out, once we have the spreadsheet set up with all the formulas and everything, these three values in the green are the only values then that we would change. And once we change these values, all our computations would be done for us, and we can get any of the readings that we want to off of that. So just looking at these formulas that we have here, the first formula that I actually created was this one right here. And what we want is the interest rate per period. So if our interest was being collected monthly, which is like the 12 here, we have 12% a year, and we would be dividing it by the 12 times a year that it's being put onto the investment, which would leave us 1%. So just quickly, I'm going to change that. Let's say we were collecting that only once a year. Then each interest period would be collecting 12%. If we were doing it quarterly and collecting it 4 times a year, we'd be collecting 3 times, 3% interest each time. Okay, I'm just going to leave that at 1. We're going to deal with it yearly in this example. Now, just taking a look at our formulas here, and we're going to be looking at one really big change here that we haven't seen before. If you notice, we're only collecting 1 time per year, so each of these interest periods are representing a year. Just for this case, I'm going to change this to 2 times a year. So our first interest that we'd be collecting interest would be at half a year. Our second time we collect interest would be at a full year, then it'd be 1.5 year, then it would be 2 year, 2.5 years, etc. So we're just going to figure this out as a formula, and it's going to be the interest period divided by the number of interest periods per year. If I were to put in the formula A8, which is this one, divided by this one, when I fill, it's going to always fill with this one, then divided by the one below. This one divided by the one below. This one divided by the one below. This number is going to change in relationship to where our new formula is, and we don't want it. We always want it to be 2. So we lock it. And we lock our E3 by putting these dollar signs. $E, $3. That locks it, so as we cut and paste, it will always be E3. So I'm just going to fill this down. You can see it's A8 divided by $E, $3. When I can fill that down, if you notice, the A, the first number, the A9, the A10, the A11, the A12, it keeps changing. But the E3 that's locked with those dollar signs, it always stays the same. So it's always reading from this cell. The same with the next one. I want it to, the value of the interest, since it's simple interest and we're always just making interest on the principal, our value is always going to be E1. So when I fill that down, it's going to always be E1. It's locked. Those dollar signs lock it. Our interest, we're just using our formula. Cover this in the exercise. And I am multiplying the principal by the rate. Actually, it's going to be this rate that I'm multiplying it by because it's the rate. There, I'm going to change that back to 1. So if you notice, these values are always the same, and it's locked. It's always going to be E1 and E4. No matter which one I click on, it's always E1 and E4. The dollar signs lock it. For the value of the value of the investment now, it's just going to be, I'm just adding from the original investment plus the interest that we've just made. So I've got E7 plus E8. When I fill these down, it is going to change. Now it's going to be the investment that I had at the end of the period before, plus the new interest to give us the new value. This one is going to be the value above, plus the interest to give us the new one. I have built in this graph, if you've noticed. It's just going to show you that simple interest is indeed a straight line, and we will see a similar graph in the next one for compound interest. For these next two columns, we're going to look at that later when we look at rate of return. Just take a look at these formulas and see if you can see where they come from. And if you wish, we can carry them down now. But again, we're going to take a closer look at that a little bit later on.